A veteran and a family man with a wife and 4 children get into a heated dispute that resulted in not one, but 2 people deceased right in front of their own home. This is the story of Bladimy, Mathurin, and Chinwai Maud. Bladimy Mathurin, born June 29, 1976, was a family man, a father, a husband, and a proud provider for his wife, Marie DeLille, and their 4 children. He worked as a school bus driver and an Uber driver so he could pay for his wife's nursing school, and Marie worked double shifts as a home health aide so they could pay for 2 of their children to attend parochial school and, of course, to just make ends meet. In his spare time, Bladimy enjoyed bodybuilding, going out with friends, and enjoying some good music while puffing on cigars. Marie said for the most part he would go to work, go to the gym, or just be at home with his family. And she described him as her best friend and said they never had any fights or any violent disputes throughout the 20 years they'd been married. Marie adored her husband, and their children loved their father. But unfortunately, a certain neighbor was not fond of Bladimy or his family, leading to a catastrophic event that claimed the lives of Bladimy and his stepson Chinwai. It was Sunday night, October 29th, 2023, somewhere between 10:30 and 10:40 p.m. when surveillance in Bladymy's apartment building caught the chilling last moments of he and his stepson's lives. In the video, you can see their neighbor, 47-year-old Jason Pass, standing in the 4th floor hallway of their residence building located at the Flatbush Gardens complex at 1418 Brooklyn Avenue in the East Flatbush section of Brooklyn, New York. Jason lived on the 3rd floor with his 73-year-old mother and his sister, but he came up to the 4th floor where Bladimy and his family lived, and you can see him standing a short distance outside of Bladymy's apartment door. The first person to come out that door was 47-year-old Bladimy. You see him come out of his apartment with no shirt on, ready to approach Jason, but then he goes back into the apartment. You then see his wife, Marie, come out, and there's an exchange of words between Jason and Marie, but then Bladimy returns to the hallway with a shirt on. You can't hear any audio, but you can visibly see in their body language that there's a verbal dispute going on between Bladimy and Jason. Now, during this verbal dispute, Bladimy has a pair of scissors in his hands and he holds it up to Jason's neck area in a physically threatening way. As he's holding the scissors up to Jason, Marie tries pulling Bladimy away from Jason, but Bladimy pushes her off of him. And this is when we see Jason remove a firearm with a green laser scope from his waist and points it at Bladimy. Bladimy sees the firearm and begins to push his wife back towards his apartment door. And with his back turned, Jason fires several shots, wounding Bladimy. Marie runs into the apartment, grabbing her daughter at the same time. Her son, Chinwai, appears to have been running in Jason's direction, seemingly nervously trying to run down the staircase. But then Jason shoots Chinwai multiple times. Chinwai falls down, never to get back up again. Jason then walks over to Bladimy, who was also down in front of his apartment door, but Jason shoots him several more times, with one of the shots hitting him in the head, sealing Bladymy's fate. After Jason commits this double homicide, he calmly walks over to the elevator door, waits for the elevator to come up, gets on the elevator, and leaves the scene. When paramedics arrived, the father-son duo had already expired from their head and torso wounds. At the scene, investigators found at least 9 .45 caliber shell casings on the floor. Now, I did leave the link to the site that shows the surveillance of what happened in the pinned comments of this video. I obviously cannot post it here because YouTube will kick me right on up out the algorithm, so you can watch the video yourself through the link provided. So why did all of this even occur? What started it? Well, according to media outlets that reported on this story, this whole ordeal started over noise complaints. Apparently, there had been long-standing tension between Jason and his upstairs neighbors over noise coming from the family's apartment. Well, that night his issues with the family were no different than others, but what made it different was how he approached the situation. It started that night with Jason banging on his ceiling with a broomstick from his downstairs apartment because apparently Bladymy's family had been making too much noise. Marie says she was washing dishes when she heard Jason banging, and she knew what he was banging for, so she asked her children, like, was anybody making any noise? And she said her children told her no. Then Bladimy banged back on his floor in response to Jason's banging. After that is when Jason decided to go upstairs and bang on Bladymy's apartment door, obviously angry with whatever noise he felt was coming from upstairs. Of course, Bladimy opened the door, and Jason told him to step out the door, and the rest of the events I told you a moment ago is how it all unfolded. Bladymy's wife Marie claims that Jason was prejudiced against them because they're Haitian, and said that Jason hated them with every bone in his body. It was reported that since March of 2022, Jason placed 6 311 calls to make complaints about the noise coming from Bladymy's home. But apparently, the noise that Jason was upset about, it wasn't loud music, it wasn't yelling, it wasn't partying or anything like that. It was him allegedly simply hearing the family upstairs walking back and forth, or if they dropped something on the floor, is what pissed him off. The floors are made of wood, so I don't know what Jason's ceiling is made of, but apparently he could hear the occupants of his upstairs neighbors walking back and forth, and that was enough for him to blow a fuse. Now, I know some will say that Bladimy should have never pulled the scissors out on Jason, and I hear you. But I'm stuck on how Jason even came upstairs with the firearm with a green scope laser ready to use it like a real life game of modern warfare in the first place. I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, first of all, I know firsthand what it's like hearing noise from your neighbors. I grew up like that. And even now, still to this day, there's even certain times of the day that I know that I can't record because I know there's going to be noise in my hallway. It's going to be noise in my hallway from my neighbors and their peoples hanging out. And is it annoying? Yes. It is. It's very annoying, and I can hear it in front of my apartment door. I could even hear the conversations and the music that's playing from the people who live in the apartment above me. And there's been times that I've been live on YouTube in the past, and my audience could also hear the noise as if it was like right here in my apartment. And they would be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not me. That's my neighbors in the hallway, or like that's people outside of my building." So I could definitely identify with that annoyance. Have I ever wanted to grab the blammy and boom somebody for it though? No, that's excessive. To me, it's never that serious, but that's just me. Anyway, according to thesun.com, Jason's sister, whose name wasn't revealed, spoke to the outlet and told them that she believed her brother acted in self-defense against Bladimy. She said Bladimy and his family often would issue verbal threats and verbally attack Jason, and she believed that her brother was innocent in this scenario. She said Bladymy's family knows very well that they were the ones who were the aggressors, not Jason. She said, quote, "My brother didn't just go upstairs to kill them. We're not problematic people," end quote. And she says this after knowing her brother literally went upstairs with a firearm with a green laser scope on it to do what? Play patty cake? Anyway, so she told the outlet that Jason was a veteran who served in the Vietnam War and was suffering from exposure to Agent Orange, which is defined to be a toxic chemical herbicide used in a tactical effort by the U.S. military. And exposure to this chemical is said to possibly cause cancer and other life-threatening health complications. I'm not too sure what the exposure to this chemical had to do with this situation, since she said he wasn't the aggressor. I wouldn't imagine that she was highlighting this to speak to his behavior, but I included that piece anyway since she found it significant to mention. She also spoke about how the VA was supposed to be trying to help Jason get out of the apartment complex, which she noted as another fight that she had to battle, I guess on behalf of her brother, and trying to avoid any further incidents between him and Bladymy's household. According to the Daily News, furthering her claims that Bladimy and his family were verbally abusive and threatening towards her and her brother and apparently her mother, Jason's sister said there had been times where Bladimy and them told Jason and her mom, quote unquote, "We gonna kill you, we hate you," on numerous occasions as they'd be walking out and the Mathurins were coming in, or as Jason and them were getting in their vehicle. And the sister said that her family had been living in that apartment for the past 20 years, and Bladymy's family had been living there for 5 years. And as soon as they moved in, the problem started immediately. She said, quote, "They moved furniture all times of the morning, all hours of the nighttime. They got their children running up and down like they in the playground, end quote. And she said there would be times that Bladimy and Marie would encourage their children to run around so that they can antagonize Jason and his family, saying that the noise they made was intentional. And how did she come to this conclusion that sounds delusive? I'm not sure, but to add on to those claims, Jason's sister said that there had been a time where Bladymy's family allowed their sink and bathtub to overflow purposely, which resulted in the bathroom and kitchen ceilings of their home damaged. She said, quote, "You're supposed to cut your water off when you're done washing dishes, right? Well, they let the water run until it overflowed the bathtub too." End quote. So according to her, Bladymy's family risked damaging their wooden floors in a rented apartment to purposely cause damage to their downstairs neighbor's ceilings. Jason's sister also claimed that they had complained to the building security about their upstairs neighbors about 100 times, but despite the complaints, nothing was done. She said, quote, "When they banging and stuff like that, we bang back," end quote. And she added that her family's ceiling is pockmarked from being banged with broom handles so many times. She said even though the security has come for them numerous of times, they just don't give a fuck. They just don't care. End quote. She said whenever they would go upstairs to complain, Bladimy and his family would simply slam the door in their face. She said, quote, "We didn't do nothing malicious. We just asked, can you please stop doing what you're doing?" End quote. But Bladymy's wife Marie said the reason Jason's family's complaints resulted in nothing happening was because all the complaints were unfounded. She said there had been a time where she was getting ready to go to nursing school and she was preparing a bagel for herself with some peanut butter, and the butter knife that she was using fell on the floor. Well, that was enough for Jason to go upstairs, knock on the door, and confront Marie about the quote-unquote noise. She said Jason was crazy, and since they moved there, he had been attacking her. Jason's sister said the night that Jason took Bladimy and Chinwai's lives, their elderly mother filed a complaint about the noise coming from upstairs that prompted Jason to go up there to begin with. She said Jason was a diplomatic, respectable man with a loving soul, and he initially went upstairs with peaceful intentions, you know, with the .45 caliber with the green scope laser. And she said, quote, "You got a person coming at you with scissors. What would you do? You have to defend yourself. They wanted to kill him." End quote. Now, as far as Jason goes and what happened to him after he took the lives of the father-son duo, he went on the run for a couple days. A manhunt ensued with wanted posters plastered around in attempts to find Jason, but it wouldn't be long before NYPD were able to track him down. It was the morning of Wednesday, November 1st, 2023, a little after 7 a.m. when NYPD were able to track Jason down in his vehicle after a license plate reader indicated the car was connected to the case. The police told him to pull over and asked him to exit the vehicle. This is when Jason hops out of the car with a knife in his hand. The police told him to drop the weapon multiple times, talking to him for at least 15 minutes before Jason decided to lunge at one of the officers, resulting in the police shooting Jason 3 times in the chest and once in the right leg. He was taken to a nearby hospital where he was in critical condition before succumbing to his injuries later that day. News reports considered this to be suicide by a cop. I also linked the video of Jason's last moments in my pinned comments. Marie spoke to the news about how devastated she is, losing both her son and her husband at the very same time. She said her 10-year-old daughter now has to get therapy for her trauma after watching both her brother and father gunned down just seconds apart. A GoFundMe was created on behalf of Bladymy's family on November 1st, 2023 to assist with financial challenges Marie and her children would be facing now that the provider of their home was no longer alive. The goal is set for $100,000 US. So far as of today, they've raised $20,000 US of that goal. After all had been said and done, Marie said she's not sure how she's supposed to lay down and go to sleep without the person she's had beside her for 2 whole decades and without her son. She said she wasn't sure how she could even continue to go on in life. She said she'll never unhear the haunting sounds of the bullets being shot in the hallway that night or the sound of her husband's screams, and she wouldn't wish this tragedy on her worst enemy. Tragic story here. I really don't even have the words to describe how hurt I am even telling this story. It's just one of those ones where you shake your head, you sigh in disbelief, and just wish that things could have turned out differently. It's been almost 5 months since Marie had to watch her husband and her child take their last breath in front of her face, suddenly and callously. And so I can only pray that Marie and her other children can find their strength with their higher power and with the support of loved ones. I send them my deepest condolences. And as for the loved ones of Jason, may you also be able to heal. Rest in peace, Bladimy, Mathurin, and Chinwai Mood. May your spirits live on with your family forever. You guys will never be forgotten.